Welcome in to this episode of Wear and Tear, a Bears post-game show. My name is Mason West, and we are met with Bryan Orenchuk. This first time Bryan and I got to do this together. Bryan, how you doing?
I've been better, Mason, but I am excited to chop it up with you, talk some Bears, and digest all that we've been seeing today and the rest of the season, and more importantly, where we're going. So, let's get to it.
Yeah, dive right in. Diagnostic study. This is where we are going to just take a general look at this game, and oh, what a game this was. Actually, and a little better than previously in the last couple of weeks. I mean, the Bears had 382 total net yards. They put up more yards in the first half than they did in that 49ers game. The Bears was like, what, 2 or whatever it was. So it was better on offense.
Yeah, it was. I think you saw some more fight from the whole team. And I think obviously the Lions had a lot of injuries coming into the game. And then we had some injuries up front, which got me concerned. Tevin was out early, and then Braxton went out not too far after that. And we still put up points and moved the ball. Shout out to, I would never thought I would say this, but shout out to Larry Borum for his performance. He had a pretty back-breaking penalty. But for the most part, he did a decent job up front. We showed some fight and put some points on the board and moved the ball on offense. That was nice. But ultimately, same result. And, positive and negative to with that result as far as draft position is concerned and all that. But definitely hard season for us Bears fans, despite everything we had coming into the season. So hard to swallow still, but it's Christmas time, man. So it's a good time to be alive, right?
Right. You got to try to find the positives in all this bluff that's going on here. But, it's not like the Lions did a ton on defense. I mean, let's be real. Unfortunately, Rome Odunze gave away the ball twice early in that game.
Huge.
Which it's hard to come back momentum-wise from that, and that led to some direct points.
Right.
But even early on, right, it was 10-0 for a while, where even though it felt like it was 21-0. So you get put in a hole like that. It's hard to come back from, especially when you can't get explosive plays. Really, it's a lot of individual slow dink and dunk down the field that the Bears tend to do. But if you look at some of the overall performances, I mean, first of all, with Caleb Williams having to throw the ball 40 times, that's still not what you want with your rookie quarterback. And part of the reason when you look at that is DeAndre Swift had 20 yards on 9 carries, 2.2 yards per carry. It starts with the line, of course, being a problem, whether they were healthy. And then when you start to add in the injuries, it gets worse. But I still have my problems, and I've had this the entire year. He's got these random explosive plays, but DeAndre just, he's that guy where it's like, hey, can you get me 3 yards? Like, I can get you 3 yards. Can you get me 6 yards? He's like, I can get you 3. And it's just, right. That's just his MO right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. DeAndre is what he is. I think the running back, I'm former running back. I love it. I think the best athlete on the field, but you're only as good as your offensive line. And so the diagnostic study for me today was glaring from start to finish. Our offensive line and our defensive line was just weak up front. And, there was a run there later in the game when they were icing it where Craig Reynolds ran 8 yards up the middle before getting touched.
Yeah.
Completely up the middle. It was literally one of those freight train size holes between the tackles. That's not supposed to happen. I mean, literally from hash to hash, felt like it was wide open. And so there's only so much you can do as a running back when that's not there. And he's not the guy to stick his foot in the ground and get upfield, which we need with our offensive line. Roshan's more of that, but he's not special at that. He's just kind of gritty. Montgomery was best at that. And even Herbert, to a lesser extent, was also great at that. But our offensive line, to me, it comes down to that. And And I'm looking forward to this offseason where we can address the lines, and I think we will. And I think you and I might be the last two people on the planet that are not calling for Poles' head. But honestly, I think he's been calculated in his last few off seasons, and I think he's expected this offseason to be the one that he really addresses the lines. And so if there's anything that I'm kind of, holding on hope for with Poles, it's he knows who's going to go after this line this offseason on the line, and he'll rectify those issues. But, it doesn't take a genius to know those are our issues. And so whether it's a new GM or Poles, it's pretty obvious at this point. But to me, that was the common theme from start to finish was Goff had way too much time to throw the ball. Gibbs had way too much room to run, or anyone else they had in there. And we did not have that. So, you can't win many games if you can't win up front.
No, absolutely. There was a couple bright spots here. The receivers actually did okay outside of some of those fumbles by Rome. There's a little more separation, but again, the Lions were playing off a bit too. But Keenan Allen had 141 yards today on 9 receptions.
Oh yeah.
DJ Moore 68 yards and 7, and Robodunze had 77 yards on only 4 receptions. So your big three, as it were, showed up. But you talked about the defensive side for the Bears and the offensive side for the Lions. I mean, that was just a rout from that perspective. I mean, starting with that Jameson Williams deep ball and everything that Jahmyr Gibbs did on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, chunk plays, right? I mean, every time you watch the Lions, if you're not thinking what could Caleb do in this scheme, then you're not thinking right, because they keep you off balance, and they seem to always be one step ahead of the defense with each of his calls. And but I mean, it doesn't. I mean, speed kills, right? And you can't teach speed. And it wasn't the first time today that 82-yard catch I'm talking about wasn't the first time that Jonathan Owens was out of position and caught up, not playing deep. But you take advantage of those plays, by the defense, and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff have been doing that. And so they got explosives all day. Some missed tackles here and there. Third down long conversions. But just a better team right now. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to think about positives after some of that, watching some of that, especially on the defensive side. Safety is more of a glaring need than I anticipated coming into this season. But yeah, I mean, it was some embarrassing performance. Not like you said, the last 2 weeks were even worse than this from a lot of statistical standpoint and eyeball tests. But like we said, same result. So something's still broken.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have Jameson Williams, he had 5 receptions for 143 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to keep doing what he does, 70 yards on 6 receptions. But then the thing that keeps killing you is you do finally force them into 4th and shorts. Even you had a 3rd and 17 at one point.
Okay.
They're able to hit Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe it was, for a 17-yard gain on that one. And then you had a killer where you have him 4th and short, and you're being told don't jump off, and you have Booker flying off sides and giving them a new set of downs in your own territory.
Yeah, that was my concussed corner. So you're getting right to it. Was Austin Booker? It also almost made the plays I knew was going to happen, but I didn't want to because I expected that, Mason. 4th and short, 2-minute warnings coming up. Clearly, they're going to try to get you to jump off sides before the 2-minute warning. Everybody knew it was happening, and I expected it to happen and work, and it did. And Austin Booker, as a rookie, like you got to know better, and the guys that are in the huddle with him got to be pointing it out. And golly, man, yeah, that was one of the many brutal penalties this game for sure.
Absolutely killer. All right, little break here from Underdog, and then we're going to get into some of those categories you were just talking about.
All right, cool.
Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I've used multiple sites and apps to enhance my game day, and Underdog is quite unique. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, they will rescue your entry. Red Zone Rush, a game you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes and left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted, and you'll get a 51% profits boost when you play. This season, Underdog is going to be running a special, promo, or bonus almost every single day, like profit boosts, discounts, and free picks. They're basically a sure thing. A player just has to get higher than 0.5, let's say, passing yards for that selection to win. Plus, all new users get a free pick. Download the app today and use code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every hair-raising touchdown, just like higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-873 or text NEXT STEP to 3342. New York, call the 24/7-HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right. So as we thought and not, something we expected to happen that did, and something we were a bit surprised by. So what occurred in this game that you thought would happen?
You already talked about it with the receivers getting open. I knew, and I posted on it in my players to watch. I highlighted the injuries in the backfield for the Lions defensive secondary, and knowing what we did last time we played them with a healthier secondary, I expected the Keenan Allens, the DJ Moores, and I expected more out of Rome, honestly, but I expected them to get open, and they did. So that's one thing that I expected to happen that did come to fruition. What about you?
Mine was going to be the Lions on the ground. I just thought that they were going to run amok. That's just been the story since Billings went down, and then you add in that Javon Dexter was not in there today. There was nothing that I really thought would stop them. But the thing, I'll even kind of combine this, though. I was surprised how easy they also went outside.
Yeah.
Just because I thought that, with the edges and with a little bit more range from your linebackers, you'd force them to have to be a little more dependent on running inside. But the Lions just literally ran anything and everything that they wanted all day long.
Right. Yeah. And they were getting hands-on linebackers. And it was brutal. And you have that, plays where they could have had him in the backfield and Gibbs spins out of Kyler's tackle. And it was a brutal day. Gibbs definitely torched us. The one thing I did not expect to see that I did was a 4-person sack by the Lions on a 3rd and 11 in the fourth quarter. 4 guys could have gotten credited with a sack. I don't know if I've ever seen that, especially not in a 3rd and long where you need to kind of hold. And it seems like nobody decided to block on that play. That was bizarre and timely. Some timeout, went for it on some plays, kicked a field goal on others, punted it on others. It seemed like Thomas Brown didn't know what he wanted to be today, which was a little bit frustrating for fans. But yeah, the 4-person sack blew my mind.
It's not every day you see something like that. One thing I'd add in that I was surprised by, just the absolute balls on Ben Johnson to say, I'm going to draw up what I'm going to assume is a fake stumbling by your running back and your quarterback, and that resulting in a touchdown, that pass to Sam Laporta. I know we know Ben Johnson is funky stuff. We saw in the last matchup, they tried to have Penny Sewell throw a touchdown, but that is, to me, just next level to be like, hey, you're just going to fall flat on your face, Jameer and Jared. We're going to stumble through, but the hopes that you don't actually fall, right? I mean, and that that your line's going to hold up enough that you can absolutely do that because the Bears pass rush is not going to get to you, and you're just going to rip a touchdown.
Yeah, that was one of many beautiful calls today I saw on their side for sure. I could say I definitely didn't expect to see that draw. That's like one of those backyard plays you draw up with your buddies and bring it out. But he's been doing stuff like that all year, and it works. And like you said, with the protection, it affords you so many opportunities, knowing that you've got time to execute some of these things. And you remember the one? It was I think it was double reverse or where Gibbs, there was pressure in his face and he still chucked it back to Jameson on the reverse. And like, that was a blown up play and they still executed it and got a first down. But yeah, Ben Johnson, man, I wouldn't say those are what draws me to him, but when you are successful everywhere else, you have room to grow or room to play with some of that stuff. So it is what it is.
The thing I like about that, and I agree with you, it's not like I want that happening 3 times a game, but the fact that those are the kinds of plays you practice and you keep the guys engaged, right? The
Right.
fact that you have those plays in your bag where, part of the practice during the week, you get to do something a little fun, but it's also because you earned it. You earned the fact that your offense is this consistent, is that good, where it's not a desperation play you're pulling out. It's one that keeps, again, your guys engaged, and it keeps them moving along in a grueling season where their team is falling apart injury wise. In theory, they're going to be trying to push long term into the depths of the season. So just keeping the mentality right.
Yeah, for sure. And we saw it with Nagy. I mean, they were in 2018, Nagy did it really well. And it's
Yeah.
not just about having creative plays to I know you weren't saying this, but it's not just about having fun plays for the guys. It's also about calling them at the right times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that Ben Johnson seems to excel at, is the timing of his calls is just impeccable. And so, yeah, I think, and the guys feel off that. And so then there's this trust that you build with your coaching staff where, coach, you tell me to run through a wall, I'm going to do it because they know it's best for the team and it's going to work. And so, you just have that culture flying high in Detroit. And so it's cool to see, especially hoping that, we can get Ben Johnson to join ship over here, but and bring some of that with them. But yeah, definitely some creative juices flowing for sure every week with them.
Yeah, if I'm Ben Johnson, I'm just putting that play up if I come into the Bears and part of my interview, I'm putting that play up and I say, woo me. That's all. I don't need to say anything else. Why should I be here? All right. It's going to be a good day. This is something positive from this game. What do you have?
Oh man. Let's see. I wrote some stuff down. I didn't write anything down for this one, Mason. Not that there's nothing to pull from. I think obviously Caleb Williams is a huge support or a huge pro for us. I think Zach Pickens had his best game as a Bear, which is pretty low bar. But for me, I think, as we talked about with kind of the general prognosis, it was the trenches. And I think if you beef up the trenches, this whole team is going to look so much better. So for me, we're not that far, from it. And I think most people knew that coming into this year, we weren't going to contend. I think we're going to be a lot more competitive than we were. But next year, after the offseason, after the extra draft capital, was going to be our year to compete. So I think we're close. And it could be the Bears goggles that I'm wearing. But to me, like we talked about with Ben Johnson, the offensive line affords him so much. And that's kind of what I feel here is if we finally beef up our trenches, then future's looking bright in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, can you go out and get this would be funny. Can you go get, did Steelers let James Daniels walk? Do you bring him home again after the Bears didn't have him back? A Will Hernandez, a Nate Herbig, John Feliciano, just to name a couple of guys that are going to be free agents this next year. Can you do that? And then, right, attack it in the draft. You do have, 2 seconds. You have a first at going into today was at 9th overall.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you really beef up? That's just the offensive side. Same thing being said. I mean, there's some great prospects. Mason Graham comes to mind on the defensive side. So, what can you do there?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know you and I are both, along with everybody else, dreaming for a Trey Smith to poke available. Not sure it's going to happen, but he'd be the dream. I think pairing him up with a Ryan Kelly would be epic. I saw mock draft recently where Mason Graham was taken, and then the Arizona guard was taken, and then Kenneth Grant was taken. Another defense tackle from Michigan, I think, would be a great pairing with Javon Dexter. So I think we're close, and I think you beef up those, and there's resources available and players out there. Just a matter if they do it. So, I think we're close.
Mine, and some people might take this as a negative actually, but I'm going to say this, my positive is the emotion that comes from Caleb Williams. I want my quarterback to care that much in a season where you only have 4 wins after week 16, where when he, threw that first touchdown that they had, where let's be real, even then, like the game is more or less out of hand unless some crazy things happen, but he still is ecstatic, on the field. Right. You're seeing that even like when Cole Kmet had his touchdown, right? Mm-hmm. The emotion that Caleb had with him, and Cole had his celebration. I know people are like, "Oh, you're down by a lot. Why are you celebrating?" But to me, again, that's showing that they care. And that goes to the other side of it too. When there's something negative and, he misses a ball he knows he should have hit, the fact that he's exclaiming, and upset about that I like that.
Yeah.
Versus a lot of the talking heads that will clip out him on a bench, or him on the ground after he's getting hit for the 1,000th time in a game and saying, oh, this body language or what you're doing here is not what we want. Like, get out of here with that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm all about Caleb. I think he's the right guy for the job. I wouldn't rather have any other young quarterback in the league than him. Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about the future of the Bears in a positive light and not talk about Caleb Williams. Everything about him, his makeup, his competitiveness, the way I don't know if you saw the clip before the game. He's leading the guys out of the tunnel and just saying the right things. And yeah, like we're down. We have a losing streak going on, but he's still fighting for every inch. And, he's not tearing down guys either. That's another thing too, is he's frustrated, but he's not getting in guys' faces, chewing them out for having a false start and killing a drive, which happened plenty in this game. Yep. Different things like that. But I love the leader that he's becoming. Absolutely.
All right, concussed corner. Why don't you keep on going? Something in the game that was so odd, the decision maker must have been concussed. I know I kind of stole your thunder a little bit if you want to do the same one.
Yeah. No, the Austin Booker offsides. That was my concussed corner. I mean, you got to know it, and everybody know it. It's not even been the first time in this season. I think that he has done that. So you just got to be better than that. And I'll leave it there. But it was an obvious situation, and you just got to be better. You're a pro now, and it's end of your first season. You got to know better, and he didn't.
For me, and you alluded to this earlier, it's just some of the decisions that Thomas Brown made in terms of when to kick a field goal versus when to, go for it. I mean, at one point you're down 20-0 and they score, it's 20-7, right? It's just, like, why you're down by a lot there. I just don't understand then when it's now, what was it? Oh yeah, like near the end of the game, they kicked a field goal there. They had another opportunity where they could have gone for it, but they didn't. So they opted for the punt there instead. It's one of those ones where, especially for like a Thomas Brown, you have nothing to lose at this point. Right. Same thing for the entirety of this team. You have nothing to lose, especially in the context of this game. If it was closer and you were trying to hold on to a win, if you were just like, hey, we need all the points we can get to just creep in because the game was a little bit closer, I would get it. But just for today, it just seems like you were the game plan was a game plan for a different kind of game.
Yeah, no, like I said, you couldn't get a beat on what he was about. Like went for it, didn't go for it, kicked field goal, punted, and I mean, you're coaching for your job right now, and we're down by 17 for the most part at the end of the game there. Yeah. Why not go for it? And I know the odds are against you, but screw that. Like, show some life. We've got the receivers. We had just converted a 4th and 1 with a 30-yard pass to Rome. And so, yeah, that was a little bit mind-boggling too. But for me, I was really optimistic, Mason, about Thomas Brown. I thought he could have the inside track at the future head coaching job. And that ship has long sailed for me now. But head scratching calls like that and just inconsistencies is definitely perplexing for sure.
We here for moral support. This is an area to work on going forward. And, mine, I'll keep it to the next just couple of games here. I would just like to see more. I want to see, it was his first game back. I want to see more Roschon, or if you don't feel comfortable with him out there, which first of all, don't have him active if you're not comfortable with him out there. It's just is what it is. More Darrington Evans than in that case, because I think he'd be fine at this. I just would like to, because I would like them more in the pass blocking game. Mm-hmm. They are going to get you more yards, those 3 yards, 4 yards at a clip. And I think right now, just with how the Bears O-line is set up, that trying to just go 5-on-5, or sometimes it ends up being 5-on-6 as they read it out, you just see DeAndre leaking out too quick, too early on some of his for the checkdowns instead of putting a body on someone. And even if he does, a lot of times he's getting just absolutely blasted. So I think if you want to look at more of they didn't run the ball very much this game. I mean, if you take out Caleb, they only ran the ball 11 times because the script just didn't allow for more. Right. But even when you look at some of the other ones, let's say when Roschon was healthy, sometimes Roschon was only getting carries on the goal line. I just don't think that's the split that really makes sense, because at the end of the day, DeAndre is not a bell cow. He's not Derrick Henry. I mean, look at this. Look at the Lions. I mean, even for them, I mean, Craig Reynolds still got 4 damn carries, even though they weren't very good, but they still
Right.
did it. And I
Right.
think at the end of the day, Roshan's more impactful, or even like a Darrington Evans. I know that's probably saying a bit much, but when he gets the ball, it's actually surprisingly decent. But anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Just I want to going forward, please, like, let's see a little more spread ability of the carries, because I just don't think DeAndre is the guy that you want to be handing the ball 90% of the snaps to.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And we saw it with the Lions all year. I mean, they had one of the best 1-2 punches with Dave Montgomery and Gibbs. That's how you kind of want it. And yeah, we've not had that. And I will say one thing I did not expect to see was the first 2 drives of the game to see more carries by receivers than running backs. Like that is something I didn't expect to see. I don't want to ever see again, to be frank with you. Because yeah, Roshan, Darrington Evans, they should be getting those carries more than Rome and DJ all the time early. But yeah, I'm with you. And there were some games early on, like I think it was the Rams game was one that we really complimented the backs well, where Roshan was not just in there to convert 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, 4th and goals. He was in there to kind of get those 3-4 yards in the cloud of dust, where you keep that defense honest, and then you keep Swift healthy and fresh, and then get him in space to get a big play. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's huge. I would like to see more Komet involvement.
For sure.
He scored today, but he only had like 3 targets. I think it was
two targets, 2 catches for 9 yards.
Yeah, and that's just not going to cut it. Now, obviously they're using him to block a lot more, but I still think he's a weapon, and he's a weapon you can get to quickly. So you don't have to spend as much time in the pocket and risk getting sacked. Get to him quickly. Let him carry some guys with him for a few yards, and invoke some physicality. Keep them on their toes. That just because he's in doesn't mean he's going to block. If you can't be too predictable for the defense. But I would like to see more Komet involvement, and maybe less wide receiver runs, to be honest with you.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, because why not? Speaking of those wide receiver runs, what do you think is the best role for DJ Moore? Because it seems like, especially in the Thomas Brown world, it's a gadgety guy / very short routes.
Yeah. I like getting DJ Moore the ball. I think he's one of our best players. He can make stuff happen. He legit has running back skills, with his ability to stay low, center of gravity, his explosion, his agility, his contact balance. I love his skill set, but he can toast you deep as well. I mean, the last Lions game we played, I think was one of his better games, especially from a usage standpoint. He was one-on-one in the slot with Brian Branch and beat him on an inside move for that seam route. I think you can use him like that. I think get him in space down the field, those deep digs down the field. I would like to see a little bit more of that from him. The bootleg rollout where he was the guy in the flat catching the pass, that's almost an automatic first down every single time. So I like getting him involved. I think he should be our most targeted guy, but I definitely think more downfield would be ideal for me when it comes to DJ.
Yeah, I mean, and just more runaway routes.
Exactly.
There are a lot of times. I mean, he has been open. Even the one, it was on the deep ball to Rome, where it was 4th and 1, and there's that moment where, like, oh no, why are you throwing it so deep? Oh wait, cool. Yeah, he caught it.
Yeah.
I believe if you look back at it, DJ was open at a drag route across, so he is getting open on those. It's just that a lot of times Caleb was not getting him for some reason. So I'm curious as to what's going on there.
Yeah.
All right. Another break here, and then we get to the end, near the end of our show. What's important? Stat. This is just a stat from the game you thought was important. Pretty self-explanatory. What do you got?
For me, it was penalties. So if you were to look at the box score penalties at this point, it doesn't look as lopsided as it really was, because the Lions had like 3 penalties in the final 2 minutes when it didn't matter to them because they had the game in the bag. But we committed 10 penalties for 70 yards. And as a team that is just not good enough yet, you cannot also be undisciplined and kill drives like that. That is just absolutely killers and shooting yourself in the foot, especially with an offense that's struggling to find rhythm. Um, Penalties to me is something that has been just a backbreaker. And even with the Lions, 3 or 4 penalties there at the end, we still had 10 penalties for 70 yards compared to their 7 for 55. Again, they already had the game in the bag when they started committing some penalties, and we had committed those 10 early when it really hurt, it seemed like. And I would like to see some more disciplined football moving forward.
Yeah, and the big question on that is then who is going to be the head coach moving forward, right? I think a lot of people, if not most, are still going to have Ben Johnson circled there. Does he get some of the Dan Campbell rub off in terms of how to control a team, or do you go the route of Rabel or of Flores, who, I mean, that is the ultimate team control, we are not going to make mistakes kind of decision
Right.
if you went that route. But yeah, we'll see, definitely based off of who the Bears are bringing in for some of their interviews, what the vibe is they're going for. Because I mean, this has been a problem for a while now. I mean, the Bears have just been an undisciplined team for years, it feels like.
Yeah, and it just seems like at the most inopportune moments, right? Like when we need them to the least is when they shoot themselves in the foot. So that's the worst part about it all. But yeah, I think whoever comes in needs to really make that a point of emphasis. Absolutely.
My stat, I chose to avoid this game because I got sick of looking at this game specifically when I was writing my notes. So I'm going to steal something from Bill Zimmerman at Bill T. Zimmerman on Twitter. He tweeted out Chicago Bears all-time single-season passing yardage leaders. At number 1, you have Eric Kramer. Back in 1995, that was 3,838 yards. The next 4 seasons are all Jay Cutler in 2014, 2009, 2015, 2010. And then Caleb is currently in 6th with 3,269. So with 2 games remaining, he's about 570 yards away from, in theory, being first overall. But let's just say we take that out entirely and we just say, it's pretty crazy still to think, even with the lofty expectations that were set this summer, that Caleb could still be in the top 3, because 3rd overall is Jay with 3,666. So he's very easily could be a top 3 all-time single season passing yardage by the end of this year.
Oh, it's awesome. And, I think it was this week, people were going around on Twitter and kind of sharing what their alphabetic grade was for Caleb. And it's hard to be too critical of him considering all he's been through and what he's accomplished. And, like you said, we still have 2 games left. And, obviously there's one extra game these days than there were when those guys played.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still right there already as a rookie with now, his 3rd technical play caller of the year, 2nd head coach of his rookie season. The offensive line struggles that he's endured, and he's right there. And, oh, by the way, he's continued to extend his streak for most passing attempts without interception. So, I'm super encouraged. Like we talked about, he's got the physical makeup and the mental makeup to be the franchise caller, and hopefully it attracts guys like Ben Johnson this offseason to come and work with him and the rest of the team.
And you can just poke holes. Obviously, like you said, there's the extra game aspect. You can talk about with Kramer being a different era. You can talk about even that to an extent with Jay in terms of how they operated. But even if you compare him, let's say, to Jaden Daniels, this year, Jaden has 3,302 passing yards. So Jaden's only about 40 yards ahead of him. And that's with all of the problems that have been going on this year. And you want to talk about some of that middle section of the year in particular, where, I mean, everything, especially offensively, was just so depressed. That's a good sign. We can feel very good about what Caleb is going to be. He still has his problems. I can list off at least 5 things I need him to be better at, but that's still pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's encouraging. And, again, I wouldn't trade him for anybody at this point. I know Jaden is having a hell of a year. He just had an amazing comeback too, by the way, against the Eagles through 5 touchdowns. He's a hell of a ball player. Great kid. I'd love, if I was, I was going to say Redskins, if I was a Commanders fan, I would be a huge fan of Jaden Daniels. But I love Caleb, man. I'm happy with him. You know, again, talk about being like a running back. Like Caleb Williams, he also has legit running back skills with his
He's got
ability
wiggle
to.
to him.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah, and some explosion, some toughness. Um, yeah, I love everything about this kid.
Yeah, the NFL is better when you have good quarterbacks, and
Right.
there's a chunk of time there where we're lacking some. Right, there's a
Yeah.
lot of draft classes. The Kenny Pickett class comes to mind. You could talk about the Mariota class also to an extent.
Right.
There's just been a lot of you talk about the Justin Fields one. Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not a Trevor Lawrence guy. I mean, I think he's still a
Yeah.
good quarterback, but not what some people have him at.
Right.
And the NFL's been worse off for it. So if you're a football fan, you should be happy that there are guys like Caleb, Jane Daniels, Drake May, who's looking really good. Bo Nix, I think, is a bit of a Sean Payton thing, but that's a
Right.
whole other conversation. But you should be happy with that versus right now it's just fan bases trying to tear apart other quarterbacks, and it's just gross.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's yeah, the league is better when you got young signal callers playing well for sure.
Yeah. Kombucha, peak performance moment. Kombucha is a premium performance-focused kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. So clearly, whoever is going to earn this nod is clearly drinking kombucha, which you should too. Use code BearGutCheck to get 15% off your order. What was your defining moment from the game?
Oh, you know, it's hard to say those fumbles early would be it. That's kind of where I would lean to, but I think the 82-yard touchdown to Jamison Williams was kind of the backbreaker. You know, we were fighting back and forth, and just to let that just brutal blow happen, I think that was like, okay, you know, like they're not getting slowed down by our defense, and we can't stop shooting ourselves in the foot. You know, it was 0 turnovers to 2 turnovers. You're not going to win with our team against the Lions without forcing any turnovers. So I think that 82-yarder to Jamison was the backbreaker for me as far as, you know, the peak performance, biggest play of the game.
Yeah. I would go with, if I'm going negatively, to go with the second Rome fumble, because I think the first one you can overcome because again you still had the game relatively in control there,
Right.
but when you go from that high of energy with how good that play was initially to the
Yeah.
precipitous drop off of the turnover there, that one really shifted the mood of the game, I would think,
Yeah.
on the field, because it definitely did as a viewer.
Yeah.
If I had to go with something on the more positive side, at least trying to move forward with it, I would say the touchdown to Keenan Allen,
Yep.
where that ball was just on a rope up the
On the sideline.
sideline.
Yep.
Because there was a similar play last week where Caleb didn't hit that, and it's more of the medium range, but Caleb's medium to definitely long ball has been all over the place. Let's be real, this year. So I think seeing that ball go in the bucket, I'm hoping can really start to build his moderate to deep ball confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that for sure. One of the ones for me that I loved was stopping the Lions on 4th down, and when they went for that pass over to Jahmyr Gibbs over the
Mhm.
middle, and Edmonds actually I think it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Edmonds got a hand on it and got the ball back for us. You know, that was huge. You know, you've got to turn the ball over on downs if they're going to be so aggressive and go for it all the time. And doing that kind of made it seem like we still had hope in the game, when reality we didn't. But yeah, that was a good moment. One of the few positives on the defensive side.
Hey, I can't help it being a Bears fan. Even when the game seems pretty much out of reach, I'm still doing the math. All right, so if you score 2 touchdowns here,
Exactly.
that's basically then only 1 score away.
Right.
I just
Yeah.
can't help it.
You know, we used our timeouts fairly well in this game. That was kind of an unsung story.
Yeah, that is very true. You weren't either going into the half with just ones you should have used, nor were you just burning them on ridiculous plays.
Right. Right. That was nice.
Master player of the game, aka MVP. The master can close the teeth with a force of up to 55 pounds on the incisors and 200 pounds on the molars. You know, helps us eat, drink, do podcasts. Pretty important muscle for especially how tiny it is. So, well, who's your player of the game?
I gotta say, Caleb. I know. Keenan was on the other end of a lot of those passes, and he had some great catches, some really impressive catches in this game. And I love his rapport with Caleb and getting open. And even when he's contested, he can bring him down. But Caleb, man, like you talked about, the grit and the desire to hang in there when you're losing, and the one thing that was frustrating was the first play. It was a bad pass. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
first play of the game, the scripted first play of the game, and you miss it. Like, that is inexcusable. But you didn't have as many of those this game. Bad passes from inaccurate passes, which has kind of been one of his surprising downfalls on the year. And the way he kept marching back was encouraging. Now, granted, they had the injuries, right? But he was throwing some dimes in there, like the Keenan one you talked about before, and the ballsy throw on fourth down up to Rome, putting it up high for his rookie buddy. But I think Caleb's got to be the MVP for me.
Yeah. Keenan would be a good answer. And honestly, the last couple of weeks, last 6 or so, maybe even, if I didn't think Keenan's presence was such an impediment on Rome's development, I would even be saying like, hey, why not try to bring Keenan back on a team-friendly deal? But I do unfortunately think that just because of who he is, his status, things of that nature, it isn't allowing Rome to necessarily be on the field as much as I'd like him to be the 1 or 2 read as much as I'd like him to be, just because going forward, he should be, if he becomes who we hope he is going to be, who we think he's going to be, the true wide receiver 1 of this team. And so does bringing Keenan back continue to reduce that role potentially? But yeah, I mean, it was a great game by him, but I have to agree with you. It's got to be Caleb. Just the amount of just beating he takes, some of it self-inflicted, of course, because he tends to hang on to the ball a little bit right now, but a lot of it is just this porous offensive line trying to make a play for the team, because there's the separation isn't fantastic by receivers right now still. Yeah. And it's like you mentioned it earlier. I mean, some of his runs, he was able to keep the chains moving and set up 4th and short in one instance with his legs.
Right.
He is the reason that they even put up 17 points. I mean, literally, obviously, but I think if you put like for the few Tyson Bagent bangers that still exist out there, it would not have been better with Tyson out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he's willing them to cross the finish line as best he can and keeping it competitive. The bottom line is our defense sucked it up today.
Yep.
And it's been a weird thing, but again, I think it comes back to the trenches. Either way, with the trenches being what they are, Caleb is still fighting, nail and tooth to extend drives and make plays. And I just love what we're seeing from him for sure.
Just to elucidate that point even more, so you mentioned how the defense sucked it up. Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 4.7 yards per carry, Reynolds 4.5, and Jefferson 4.3. Like all 3 levels of their runners were above 4 yards per carry. That's insane.
And none of ours averaged more than 3, other than our quarterback. So, definitely, something's got to give at some point with that line. But, honestly, man, going back at the box score, I know we talked about Caleb and we talked about, where he is all time, but that was Keenan's best game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say, being that security blanket. And I'm with you. Well, I could go back and forth with you on the Keenan Allen thing. I think team friendly, you bring him back. I think if you have a problem of too many weapons, then you don't have a problem. You need to figure out somebody that can make that an asset to you. And I think a guy like Ben Johnson could do what we need to do to get those guys the ball. But yeah, no, it's a tough predicament. But I think with what we've seen from Keenan and what our offense can do with those guys, I think it'd be worth bringing him back, at least considering it for the right price. But he might be pricing himself out of conversations with us, really, with the way he's playing.
Yeah, and that's a valid point too. I think it depends on who you have at the helm in terms of the offense. And if let's say I was the GM of the Bears, and let's say it's Ben Johnson for the sake of argument, and he's sitting across the table and say, hey, I can make this work and highlight how these individuals are going to be deployed differently than they were this year, then it's definitely a conversation. It can just be tough, I think, when you're Caleb. This is a rookie year problem, especially, but when you're Caleb as a rookie and you're looking in, obviously just Keenan Allen with a lifetime achievement award is like an alpha. Rome is the 9th overall pick and was the big X, get the ball consistently in a Washington offense. And then DJ Moore is the highest paid player in Bears history. I mean, to keep all three of those guys happy, in theory, even if you want to remove Rome, to keep DJ and Keenan happy, I think that's a lot of stress to put on Caleb. And I think we've seen that on the field a bit. So if you have an actual plan where, and Keenan's on board with it, DJ's on board with it, conversations have been had where it's like, hey, Keenan, there might be a game where you get 3 targets because Rome's going to be in 12 personnel now, or however you want, or whatever the conversation is. I'm all ears. But if he's going to still be like, dude, no, I'm a number 1 and I need X amount of money, like you're saying, because I can put up 141 yards on 9 receptions and a touchdown, then, probably have to look elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. Same page. Yeah. I'm not saying he needs to come back, but I'm also not saying he's definitely not worth talking to.
Yeah.
So
there's a couple Bears players like that where it's not as cut and dry in terms of, Tevin Jenkins is another good example. I don't think it's easy for some people to point and say like he absolutely needs to be gone. I don't think the answer is that simple. But there's multiple other players that are like this where conversations need to be had.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things we're seeing this year is the lack of depth behind those guys is one of the bigger problems, particularly on the defensive line, in my opinion.
Oh, geez, yeah, there's like nothing there.
There's nothing there. And so, if you're going to invest in somebody and have them be started, you got to have some more depth behind them. And so I think Tevin is worth bringing back if he's not going to break the bank. You just need to have a contingency plan, whether that's a day 2, early day 3 pick, or a free agent veteran that can slide in. I think Ryan Bates could have been that if he was lick healthy all year, but he's been just out of it. But yeah, no, I'm with you. There's definitely some tough conversations to have for sure.
Prognosis period. This is a brief look ahead, and I'm gonna kind of ask you to double dip here. For the Bears, what is this game and what does it mean for the last 2 games, and even for the Lions, just because in division, just gonna be interesting because obviously what the Bears do going forward is going to matter where the rest of this division kind of ends up. What are your thoughts for both of these teams?
Well, I think obviously it's one of the best divisions, if not the best division in the sport. And so it's, uber competitive. And I would like to think that we make it even more competitive with a beefed up offensive defensive line. I think we can. I think, a lot of kind of up in the air when it comes to our future. Are we going to hire the right head coach? Do we make the right moves in free agency? Do we get the right guys in the offseason? If, then we should be in the contention for, the conversation for best team in the division and compete. Because the reality is we've competed with these 3 teams this season, and they're the best teams in the league. So we're not that far off. As far as the Lions are concerned, had they been healthier, they were my favorite to win the Super Bowl. But they're so banged up right now. And I know they might get Hutch back for maybe the NFC Championship game, maybe Wolverine Montgomery, even though I know he goes by Knuckles, but his healing ability, which I know you appreciate, he might be back for the playoffs. And he is a stud and kind of a locker room leader, but they've gone through so much. I don't know that they can last, against the Bills again, who are playing some of their best ball right now. And even the Vikings are playing strong. So it'll be interesting, but I think the future is looking bright for Detroit. I think a lot of people forget about a very similar player to Goff that's sitting on the bench in Hendon Hooker. And, so Goff might be getting older, but you already have a quarterback succession plan in place in Detroit there. The real question for me with Detroit is if Ben Johnson, if and when he does leave, who's going to take over? I know they showed Antoine Randall, obviously former great Steeler slot receiver who's in the offensive meeting rooms and part of that offense. Does he take over? But can they overcompensate for the loss of Ben Johnson? That's going to be the most interesting thing to me with the Lions. But I think obviously they've got the talent and the leadership to last a while in the league landscape of elite teams.
Yeah. Just go with the Lions first. I talked about this a little bit in the preview show. Brain drain is real. So if you have Ben Johnson leave, if you have Aaron Glenn leave, because he's been talked about for a head coaching position as well, and even probably more so with all the injuries that have been on the defensive side and the fact that this defense is still as good as it is. And then, of course, you always are going to have players that leave with them. right?
Yeah.
Because part of the people you trust the most are probably the people that you just spent time coaching. Now, you don't want to totally take, neuter the team that you're leaving, but
Right.
does Hank Fraley? Do you grab him because of what he's done with that offensive line? Can you
Oh
make
yeah.
him a assistant head coach, O line or offensive coordinator, or something of that nature? Same thing and then defensive end when it comes to Aaron Glenn. And I know that they've talked about Tanner Engstrand, the passing game coordinator, maybe as the individual could step in for a Ben Johnson. But that's all well and good until you have to actually do the job, and then is it actually as good as you think
Good
it's
enough.
going to be?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those years where I agree with you. They were my favorite going into this year, and they were my favorite until some of these injuries really started whittling away. And if you get in a game, against you're in the NFC Championship game now. You're talking about the Eagles. You're talking about
Right.
even like teams that they might play early on, the Buccaneers, like the Packers, the Commanders. These are all teams that are good enough that if you're not on your P's and Q's, if Monty's not back and everything of that nature, I mean, you could lose, and that would now all of a sudden that's 2 years in a row that could have been quote unquote the years. And with that brain drain, are you back? Because there's no guarantee you're ever back.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Bears, these games still matter. I'll keep saying that till the season's over, especially this next one where they're going to play the Seahawks the day after Christmas. A lot of eyes are going to be on this game, and I say that matters because the national narrative always matters. And I don't care who you talk to. Players listen to this, they watch this. Players, coaches do as well. So, in terms of your head coach search, in terms of your free agency, things of that nature, putting on a show, I guess you could say, in your final national game of the year, I think is going to, it might be the last 5% deciding factor for someone, but it still matters. You cannot just go out, lay an egg in the last 2 weeks and peace out to vacation mode. You just can't.
Yeah. And so in that sense, I'm grateful that they came out, like we talked about, much improved this week as they have been the past couple weeks. I think if you put that sort of performance that they had put on tape the last 2 weeks, then, nobody's safe. And I mean, nobody, locker room or front office. So I would love to see some fight. I thought this was a winnable game, but when you go down quick 2 turnovers, I don't think it's enough for this team to overcome against a team as strong as Detroit. I definitely think Seattle's a winnable game too. It's at home. It's national, and like you said, but yeah, it's absolutely, guys are playing for jobs. Like for instance, a Chris Williams. I think he's earned a chance to play, to at least be on the team in training camp and fight for a spot. He's not terrible depth at 3 technique. So guys are still playing for jobs out there. I'd love to see more Terrell Smith. We keep saying that, and we keep seeing Tyreek Stevenson, who didn't have a terrible game, but it was close there. I thought he was going to get a penalty when Jameson Williams did early. But we still got young guys to play for. I just, the offensive line scares me, man. The Seahawks have one of the best defensive fronts in the whole league, and especially up front in the interior, and our line we struggle. And so, can Caleb stay alive? And that's the most important asset out there. So you have to offset it with some run game, which we didn't see today. Like you talked about, the script got away from us. But yeah, I'd love to be competitive, keep Caleb healthy. Heck, man, win some records as a Bears passer. I mean, that'd be pretty sweet to end on. And we could lose every game of the season, beat Green Bay last game of the year, and I'm happy. So we definitely still have some stuff to play for this year, for sure. But it'll be interesting to see who's really fighting like they care. That was one of my biggest things, was who's going to care. I know Jalen Johnson has been one of the few that has shown that he has the heart. TJ Edwards is another one. But how many guys are going to show that? And we'll see. These last 2 weeks will be telling.
Absolutely. All right. That's all we have for today. Bryan, thank you so much for joining me on this. I know you got 2 really unfortunate games that you got to do a post game for.
Yeah.
So hopefully maybe next year you sign up for an earlier one, because maybe there's more hope and more positivity. But where can people find all the work you do?
So right now, on X. I'm there. You have my handle up, and then Windy City Gridiron. At this moment, I post every day after some notes from the game. So I'll be talking about some of the stuff we talked about today. And then typically the day before games, I highlight one player on offense and defense for each team that I'll be watching. And just to give you an idea, today, Rome was my offensive player, and defense was Tremaine Edmonds. And then for the Lions, it was Gibbs on offense and Jack Campbell on defense. And just to give you an idea, but on Windy City Gridiron, best place on the planet for Bears info. But yeah, I'm on Twitter too, or X, following you and some others, and happy to chop it up with anybody. I like to comment, so get at me.
So you're saying that you're the reason Rome had 2 fumbles. You jinxed him.
I mean, yeah, if you believe in that, then that would align with those beliefs for sure. I knew he had to have a big game, and he started to turn it around, right?
He did.
Like he did. He definitely tried making up for it late, but those 2 mistakes, that first one, like talked about, I think that's more coaching than him. But yeah. He does need to open his breadbasket up more. But yeah, no, I was highlighting him. I was expecting a big game, hoped a big game, and it didn't quite happen.
All right. Well, that's all we got for you today. Thank you for tuning in. It looks about a little over 1,600 that are watching live. That's a lot of commitment. We appreciate it. Yeah. As Bryan said, Windy City Gridiron, Second City Gridiron, where a lot of the videos and stuff are. Share it with a friend. That's the best gift you can give this holiday season. Tell them to follow myself, Bryan, Second City, Windy City. We're still trying to regrow back our Twitter following, because there was a bit of a shift where we're trying to get a lot of people over to Second City. So please go ahead, follow, have people listen to the pod, watch the pod, come on in, chat the best. And if you have a good question, comments, throw it up there. We'll chat with you. Like I said, we like to have some back and forth. But yeah, everyone have a good holiday. If you're celebrating, if you've already celebrated or have one coming up, overall, just, be nice to everyone. There might be a fellow Bears fan that just needs a hug. Go ahead and give it to them. Bear down.
See you guys.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!